Yes, welcome into the camp. We're back. Badgers back on the field Wednesday morning for a couple of hours. And that was the last practice we're going to see until Saturday, Jesse. And then also going to be there for a Sunday night scrimmage as well. But it's getting towards the end of their time in Platteville, at least. Yeah, no, it's getting towards the end of the time in Platteville here as they get ready to come back to Madison at the end of the week.
Well, I'm sure it's been more fun for them than it has for us. Obviously, they get to stay there. We're commuting back and forth, and I know it's been a good bonding opportunity, and they're getting some good work in. But this is all part of the process to try and get them closer to the season opener and have more success.
Are you saying that you are not going to miss going back and forth to Platteville every day?
Hey, no one wants to hear anyone complain about being a sports writer, but it's a lot of driving. I'll say that.
You live on the closer side to Platteville of the city of Madison. So you have a slightly less of a drive than some other people that have been going back and forth on a day-to-day basis. I don't want to point fingers at any of those people, but that which is fine. It's about a half an hour less of a travel for you, but it's all good. I'm not complaining. We've gotten to see some football. We've gotten to see a ton of football this morning. They were in full pads today, and we got some nice 11-on-11 action. I want to start here just because I think it's interesting. They've opened the last three practices with these fourth down sessions at the they're essentially the competition portion of before they go to individual drills. They've done the one-on-ones. They've done all this different stuff. But the last three practices has been offense versus defense from inside the 10-yard line. You have one play to score, and I don't know how you would judge it, but it's. I feel like the defense has kind of held the advantage there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And they've also closed practice with those similar situations too. I think they did today as well. You obviously only get maybe one of those chances in a game, so you want to have as many as you can with these practice opportunities. But that's got to be an area of emphasis, and why we're seeing it in practice is this is a kind of offense that can put up a lot of yardage and move the ball. And then when things get condensed in the red zone, it's a little bit harder, and they want to figure out a way to have more success.
What I was going to say, I don't think it's just the red zone though either, right? Like there's been some fourth down stuff going on around midfield too, which was something that we certainly talked about last year. And as I go back and look at the stats, and something I probably should have done way before we had this conversation, they were 129th in fourth down conversions last year. According to CFB stats, they went 5 for 20 on fourth down last year. I did not realize how bad they were last year. That's insane.
Yeah. Well,
the only teams worse were Marshall, Massachusetts, Northwestern, and Kentucky. They were 25% on fourth down last year. So I think when we look at why they are doing some of the stuff that they're doing, kind of makes sense.
Yes. I also think year one, there were some questions on the outside, at least, about what is it that this team wants to be and its identity. And I go back to some of those situations where they're going under center, and you haven't gone under center. And so what do you do in like a medium range or short yardage situation? It's not the Wisconsin that we knew before, even though they still obviously want to run the ball. They just get to it in different ways. And I think all of this is part of figuring out a better understanding of their identity in year two.
Have you seen any under center work from?
No.
Okay.
I've not.
Because I've gotten that question a couple of times, and I have not seen any myself.
I would not expect to see it. If you're going to do something, then just do it really well.
I'm sure people are going to love that. I'm just going to absolutely love the hell out of that answer. But Wisconsin, again, they are not going back to what they were, even though they said. I mean, I thought we talked to Phil long ago, and he did mention something about that when we talked to him in the spring about how they could potentially do it. But I don't think we've seen any of that.
Yeah, I'm not. But to this point.
Yeah. Before we go any further, I do have to mention that home field is also. They are going back. They are going back because they got the vintage gear that you want for college athletics. They are the official apparel sponsor of the camp, and they're back in a big way with their Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 campaign, which includes these platinum football boxes that have these never before seen items Well, they're no longer never before seen because they released the box today for Wisconsin, or at least the look at the box for Wisconsin today. And for those of you on YouTube, you can see it right now. They've got these 3 new shirts, or these 3 new apparel items, including really highlighting the 1993 Big Ten champions, which is obviously very meaningful to a lot of people. But I really like the old school Bucky that says "Go Big Red." It's got like a guy that's about to run the ball down your throat. So either way, those boxes are coming out on Friday, and you can find out more information up on homefield.com. They also include socks and a really sweet hat that we talked about the other day, as well as this premium pass that you can have advanced access to feature releases. So again, more information up on homefield.com. All right, let's continue on looking back at practice number 8. And I think that there were probably a number of standouts. I know we've started with the quarterbacks the last few days. Maybe we stay with that. And I thought it was a solid day for both guys, actually, as they continued to split reps. I don't know that either one of them really outshined the other.
Yeah, so I wrote my recap. I just continue to think that there are things that Tyler does that differentiate him from Locke. But the good news is, like, Locke has legitimately pushed Van Dyke, and this doesn't feel like the competition in name only. I mean, Tyler, first of all, what he does on the ground absolutely stands out. He continues to do that in all sorts of scenarios that they had. They did a red zone situation early in practice, and he ran it in from 7 yards out. He's able to be really smart in his RPO reads. He can get to the edge. He had what I had down as a 25-yard touchdown run when they started at the defense's 25. So he's got that going for him. Obviously, there are still the throws that he makes that he just puts in absolutely the best spot. There were a couple that he hit back-to-back. CJ Williams went down the right sideline. It wasn't all perfect. There are a couple of interceptions, one in skeleton drills. You can take that for what it's worth. One in 11-on-11 where Ernest Willard Jr., of all people, gave him some pressure, which we could talk about as well. But I do think Van Dyke is showing a lot of why they went and got him. But you're right. Locke had some really good moments too, especially closer toward the end. Had a nice touchdown pass and is able to obviously run this offense very efficiently. I think the good news is that they have 2 capable quarterbacks. It's just who can take this offense to that next step and try to get them competitive in some of these big time games.
Well, that's the question. You say they have 2 capable quarterbacks. Do you think that they have a special, I don't want to say special, a good enough quarterback to lead them to victory in some of these matchups and these premium matchups that they're going to be facing, whether it's an Alabama or a USC or an Oregon or a Penn State or a Iowa, for that matter, down in Iowa City? Like, do you think that they have that guy?
My feeling is that Van Dyke is closer to being that guy between the two of them. And that doesn't mean, Locke can't have success or lead this team in the future. I just think I look at Van Dyke's experience. I look at the fact that we've talked about how good he looks as a runner, how smooth. I feel like he's showing more confidence and comfort level in this offense. I think it just comes down to, do you get the best version of Van Dyke in a given week? Because if you get that, then absolutely, I think that he has the potential to be that guy.
Yeah. So the 2 drives that I thought Braedyn Locke led 2 touchdown drives there, and it was the short ones, right? Like, again, they had a lot of success when they got the start from the 30-yard line. And he had the first touchdown, I think it was finished off with a touchdown from Darian Dupree. And then the other one was the touchdown, a dart to Bryson Green, which was really, really good throw, I thought. But you look at some of the other stuff that Tyler Van Dyke can do when he pulls the ball. He is going to be a guy that you have to respect him on the read option. Like, you have to. It's him. I don't know that, and certainly you had to do the same thing with Mordecai too. You had to respect that, and I think that's significant. And we didn't. He's held it more often than not right now, and when he's with some of the defensive ends that are crashing, or the outside linebackers that are crashing down, he's held it, and he's made some big plays off that edge. And I know that's going to be like, well, maybe the outside linebackers need to be a little bit more at home, and we can talk about that. That's probably a part of it, but he's a threat there for sure.
That's what I was going to say. He is a legitimate threat in the run game. And again, that doesn't mean that you're going to see this dude carry 12 times for 87 yards, but on the handful of opportunities that he's going to get, he can take advantage of them. It continues to stand out, and it's every single practice, not even just one rep, but multiple reps where you see it. And he's fooled the defense. He's got wide open space. Obviously, he's a bigger body, so he can presumably absorb some contact, but he's just smart, I think, in general, with his reads. He's got a willingness to step up under pressure in the pocket and then take off and run. And so that makes it challenging for a defense. I'll be interested to see when we get to the actual games how much they utilize him in that regard, because again, I think we believe they've got some talented running backs and you want to give them the ball. But look, if they're going to crash down on the running back and not give him an avenue, then Van Dyke can create some lanes there. So it is very noticeable, and obviously that's not Locke's forte, but he thrives in some other areas. And you mentioned the Darian Dupree touchdown. That was preceded by Locke delivering what I thought was one of his better plays given the circumstances. It was actually a 4th and 7. And he threw over the middle to Tyrell Henry for a first down to keep the drive alive. So you talk about some of those 4th down situations. Both those quarterbacks have been able to have at least a little bit of success in some of those 11-on-11 situations.
They definitely have. And for people that are like trying to picture this, like some of the holes that have been wide open for Tyler Van Dyke to run through, I go back to the 2019 Big Ten championship game when absolutely nobody thought Jack Cohn was going to keep the ball, and he ran it in for the touchdown, the second touchdown that they scored against Ohio State. Like, that's how big some of these areas have been for him to take off and run. And again, that to me is on the defense, but it's going to be on the opposing defense too, to at least respect it and not come down so hard on the running back when that's a possibility. So yeah, that was certainly that stood out. You mentioned the CJ Williams, those back-to-back throws to CJ Williams. I thought that they were both really good catches too.
Yes.
So while I'll sit there and say, yeah, Tyler Van Dyke put the ball where he needed to, CJ Williams made a couple of really impressive catches. The first one was, the throw was over the cornerback, but in front of the safety towards the sideline. And then the second one was on a fade where CJ Williams had the corner beat. The ball was kind of I'm not going to say underthrown. It gave him a chance right on the sideline to make a great catch, and he did. And I feel like he's started to pop up a few more times here the last few days.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. Now, CJ made that play against a couple of them against Amari Snowden, and Snowden's got a lot of potential, but he's still doing it not necessarily against the ones in that situation. But I mean, we've heard a lot about, remember when Phil Longo was on our show before spring practice started, was talking about, I believe the words he used were CJ was all rocked up. Just
veins popping.
Yeah, physically looks really good. And Kenny Guyton said this too, that he felt like, even from watching Williams's film last year, that he runs differently this year. So the hope would be, certainly from Wisconsin's perspective, that translates to the field, because I think CJ would have to acknowledge that his first year at Wisconsin did not go the way that he hoped it would go. But he's getting more and more opportunities, and he's been a threat in the deep ball.
Yeah, for sure. So he's not the only wide receiver that has stood out for me. I thought Chris Brooks Jr. had a nice day as well. Caught a great grab to move the chains right in front of RJ Delancey during one of the 11-on-11 periods. He also they also did this drill, one-on-one drill, where the quarterbacks were just throwing the ball up and the corner and the wide receiver were running, and like it was just like a fade route, and like who could catch the ball over their shoulder, or could the defender keep them from being in position to do it. And I know you mentioned Amari Snowden. This is the Amari Snowden blast hour. I don't know, but he was in coverage, but Chris Brooks Jr. caught it with one, like held him off with one hand, caught it with his left hand, and yet let out this big scream. So I think he is another guy that you think about last spring. And I know we always go back to last spring, the spring of 2023, where he was just making plays left and right. And so some of these other wide receivers, maybe a little bit further down, I'm not going to say the depth chart, but further, not usually getting some time with the first team offense, making some plays now.
Yeah, Brooks has gotten a lot more reps with the second team offense here, and they're still shuffling around the pieces, but he's been an intriguing prospect for quite some time. I'm sure you got the same questions that I did. People would ask me, have they considered moving him to tight end? Look at him physically. And I think that obviously says a lot about his ability, that he is a potential deep ball threat on the outside. Now, I'm sure he could play some tight end, but they obviously like him on the outside. He's got the physicality, And I still go back to those two plays a couple springs ago down the sideline, including one that was one-handed. He's had that ability. For him, I think it's, can you stay healthy enough to get through a season? Because you obviously never know what's going to happen. We've seen guys at various positions go down all the time. And as long as he can keep showing what he can do, maybe he can work his way in there for a handful of snaps.
And then the other guy who has been getting some first-team snaps is Tyrell Henry.
Yes.
Right? Like, we've seen him on the outside. Him and Vinny Anthony have both been getting reps with the first team, but the last few days certainly appears increased for Tyrell.
Henry's taken a significant jump from where he was in the spring, at least in terms of the opportunities that he's getting. I mean, I don't recall him getting any of the first team opportunities in the spring, and his name is coming up a lot. I obviously mentioned the catch that he had over the middle on fourth down where Braedyn Locke hit him, but he's had multiple catches. And so I think he will be a contributor in some capacity this season offensively. Obviously, we know his history as a returner, and he's still in the mix there, especially at punt return. But a lot of different guys at wide receiver getting a chance.
On the other side of the ball, Max Lofi, I thought, had a really nice day, including a pass breakup that if you go on the UW's Twitter account or their X account, you'll see. But he's a talker too. Him and Will Pauling get after it. Him and the rest of the wide receivers get after it. Even when he gets run over, he gets after it. Tyree Walker ran through him, and he looked a little lost there for a second, but he found himself quickly and started talking. He is going to be an important piece. I know we talked about him the other day with some of the stuff when we talked about the cornerbacks and the importance of having a slot. They have a slot in him, but he was also getting some work at safety too, where they had him and Austin Brown in the field together along with Hunter Wohler. And I'm not saying, and it was Austin Brown that was in the slot, and Max Lofi was kind of playing off in a little bit of a safety spot. So he's got that versatility, and I thought he had a really good day today.
Yeah, they've obviously got a lot of options in the back end. For the most part, though, Lofi has been the primary slot guy. What we've generally seen is Austin Brown and Hunter Wohler on the back end, and I think that's probably the way that they would prefer it, clearly, though we know Brown can go in the slot. It probably depends on the matchup, and do you want a bigger physical body?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think it's the versatility of it. Like, if guys if you want to motion before it, you don't necessarily have to have Max Lofi going and shifting into the slot or going with the receiver across the formation, or he can play safety, and Austin Brown can move up and play in the slot. So, like, having that versatility, I think is worthwhile, or at least notable when it comes to having both those guys on the field at the same time. So, was there anybody else on defense that stood out to you today or this week, I guess, in general?
Well, I think there's a few different things. Defensively, I thought Hunter Wohler had a really good day. I mean, I don't even know what that means anymore because you just expect it, but he's such a hard hitter. He brings so much energy. So that stands out on the back end. Up front, I mean, there's a few different things to me, and I think we talked about this on the previous show, but Ernest Willer moving out to outside linebacker, and Matt Mitchell was asked about this after practice. Really likes the violent hands that he brings, and they want to give an opportunity to contribute in a bigger way, and they need the bodies. Aaron Witt obviously went down a little earlier. Luke Fickell mentioned after practice Saturday that he's not sure how long it could be, maybe 7 to 10 days. They will get him back. Thomas Heiberger has been out. Matt Mitchell said that, he said it's not a season-ending injury. They expect to get him back. But just when you consider that from a practice perspective, at least 4 scholarship outside linebackers who are healthy in John Pius, Leon Lowry, Daryl Peterson, and then Anelo Lefele. And so I think it's really fascinating to see Willer move out, and he's got some ability. He can be a stand-up edge guy, and he can put his hand in the ground. And so that's one that, I don't necessarily know you're going to see him this season, but I just think when you're watching developments unfold in the preseason that you didn't expect, that's one of them.
So there are a couple of things we got to chat with Matt Mitchell about, because he's also still heavily involved in the special teams, but he now has an assistant, and got to chat with him as well. But first, the outside linebackers. He feels really, really good about 1, 2, 3, assuming those guys stay healthy, and then having Aaron Witt back, who is still he's still out right now. I think Luke Fickell said groin injury back on over the weekend. I think they want to be as safe as possible with him. Like they have to, be honest with us. If something pops up, let us know, because, because of the injury history there. And this has nothing to do with his injury history, right? Like, it's not anything about the foot or anything like that. So, but just be honest with us, and we're not just going to let anything go. And they want to be as safe as possible, or as cautious as possible when it comes to him. But I feel like he'll be back relatively soon. But they're still looking for 5, and unfortunately, Thomas Heiberger was going to be 5, and potentially was going to be 5. He was moving towards that, and now it's Lefele, perhaps, is number 5. Ernest Willer, who was very, very early in his move. But I think the other interesting aspect of this is Jaheim Thomas could also be a guy that they'd be comfortable being out there as well, as something that Matt Mitchell said today.
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly seen it when they go to some of those 3 inside linebacker looks, and he can rush off the edge. And so you got to take advantage of what you have with your personnel, and you're not going to be able to play 3 inside linebackers on every series. And so if you can, or every down, and if you can have a guy like that who can impact the team the way that he's been able to do it both Cincinnati and Arkansas, you want to get him on the field. And so we'll be very curious to see how that aspect unfolds as well.
Yeah, and I in chatting with Leon Lowry today, was asking him kind of what the difference for him is in this defense compared to what he was asked to do at Syracuse, where he, did have an impact in the backfield, but he said, like, he was also asked to drop a bunch. And here, there's not going to be nearly as much of that, at least as far as he knows right now. There's going to be a lot more just affecting the backfield as much as possible. And we've seen that over the last 2 practices. He has come through and done that. And then John Pius in a very similar thing. And I was asking Daryl Peterson, what's one thing out of John Pius's game that you wish you had in yours? And he said the twitchiness, how quick he is, and that fast first step off the ball. Those 2 guys, I know we've said this and we're going to continue to say it, they're in a much better spot right now than they were at this time last year at the position, no matter how much you want to give credit to CJ Getz for what he did. And Matt Mitchell even said that he respects the hell out of him, but the difference is there. The difference is clear.
That's why they went to the portal and made those 2 guys a priority. And the fact that Pius is doing what he's doing as a 250-pound man is even more impressive, because he still has that quickness and speed to be able to burst off the edge and get into the backfield. And Lowry has those same characteristics as a 252-pound guy. So, they're going to ride those top 3 a lot. I don't know what Aaron Witt's role will be when fully healthy. And he can obviously be a run stuffer. And I think Heiberger has a nice blend of abilities, even though he's a lighter body. But those top 3, I think you're going to see a lot of rotations.
I would agree. I don't know if you saw this or not. I know it's not really up your alley of things that you like to do, but the official football account, they have all the guys when they come off the field, there's a question and then they answer the question, like on video and stuff. And the question the other day was, what's the one event that you could do in the Olympics if given a year to prepare for it? Like, what's the one thing? And all the guys are coming through, and there were some really funny answers. And Leon Lowry said, swimming. I'd be great at the breaststroke. And they started asking him, like, all right, let's see your breaststroke. And he starts going and doing the backstroke. And they're like, that's actually the backstroke. He goes, yeah, that's fine. I had to bring that up to him today. He was a little embarrassed, but I thought it was hilarious. Just because the brush, it was funny. Some of those things are funny. I know that's not necessarily really up your alley, but we also got to talk with Matt Mitchell about these special teams. And Nathanial Vakos had maybe not the season he wanted to last year. He was dealing with a little bit of an injury. You had a chance to talk with him today. He hit from 49. He hit from 50 today. We said yesterday he hit from 52. He also missed a couple of kicks. Well, at least one kick at the end there. I don't know if we're counting. Are we counting the one there was a timeout before or no?
I guess technically no. Fickle came in there and called the timeout, so it didn't actually count.
Yeah. So how is he feeling going in to season number 2 here at Wisconsin?
Well, he feels like he's in a better position to be able to hit from 50 plus. The 52-yarder that he did make at practice Tuesday is the longest one that he said he's attempted this preseason. And so he wants to have more of those opportunities in practice. What was interesting is that, obviously, if you remember, the Indiana game happened and we never saw him try any field goals. What he said happened was he tweaked his back tying his shoe right before the start of the game. And so then he stands up and he said, "Oh no, I can't do anything." And so they had 3 opportunities of 50+ yard field goals that obviously Luke bypassed. And now we know why. He tweaked his back, but he said, so that lingered. And then he said he suffered like an oblique strain before the bowl game. But now he's at a point where he feels healthy. And he said one thing that he's tried to do is, he said when he used to kick long kicks, he would do it so that it would look good for TV. Like, I want to show that I could make it from 65 yards, which I thought was kind of an interesting study in psychology, where he says, now I know what my distance is and I know I can hit it. And so the hope, obviously, for him and for Wisconsin is that it translates and that they're willing to attempt some of those 50+ yard field goals. Because if you look at his career in Ohio and Wisconsin last 2 years, he's made, I think, 34 out of 38 field goals from inside 50, yet he's 3 for 8 from 50+. And last year he made every kick but one from inside 50, yet he was 1 for 4 from 50+. So that feels like the biggest bugaboo in his game. But obviously he's a really efficient kicker for the most part. It's just when you get to the 33-yard line.
So can we just have, like, going forward, like somebody that ties his shoe for him?
Maybe.
Is that like a way to avoid this going forward?
I think it makes perfect sense. You have people who literally stick the water bottle in dude's mouth between the face mask. So why can't you have someone tying shoes? Or you know what? Better yet, and I'll admit this, when I was a kid, I had Alf Velcro shoes. So this must have been like 1987 or something like that. Maybe you go with the Velcro shoe. Bring it back. It's underrated.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. But him saying that, you bringing that story, just reminds me of some of the baseball stories, like of how guys got hurt. Like a suitcase fell off a bed. This might have been Jonathan Lucroy, fell on a guy's hand and he broke his hand or something like that. There are some ridiculous stories in baseball of how guys got hurt. Tying your shoes is right up there, though. Tying your shoes before a game. That's amazing. And it also makes complete sense. And I remember sitting up in the press box, I'm like, he must be hurt. There's no way you're passing up 3 opportunities in a game this close, passing up these opportunities. They have a couple other guys, though, on the roster this year that perhaps would be given a chance in that situation now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is if presumably you travel a second kicker, they're in a decent spot, because I honestly believe this is the best depth they've ever had in field goal kicking. It's just that it doesn't necessarily matter, because Gavin Lom buried a 50-yard field goal today, and Gianni Smith, the Portland State transfer, also buried a 50-yard field goal that legitimately would have been good from 60. I mean, he has the strongest leg, to the point that when he kicks extra points, they don't have a net behind the posts. He kicked it over the scoreboard and down a hill. I'm RIP to that football. I don't know who's getting that ball. They send people down there to get them.
You're not getting. I asked one of the equipment guys, because I saw one of them go over there the other day, and I'm like, "Did you get it?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, we got it." So yeah, they send guys down there. But that said, yes, there's a net in front of the scoreboard, but there's nothing to stop it from going over the scoreboard and going down into that ravine off the practice field there in Platteville. Both those dudes have huge legs. And Nate Van Zelst is still on the team. So, but we have not seen him take a single kick here in fall camp at all. The other the other side of the special teams, or not even the other side, but the other aspect of kicking in the special teams is punting. And I think a lot of people would say that maybe they were expecting more out of Atticus Bertrams last year. Was he expecting more out of himself as well?
Yeah, he was very honest when I was talking to him about it, that he was just disappointed in year 1 at Wisconsin. And it was obviously a transition. He'd been punting in Australia. He comes to Wisconsin. The conditions in a Big Ten environment are substantially different from what he grew up kicking in, but still, he understood the task that he had. And he said that he's his own harshest critic, but in his conversations with Fickell, he knew that Fickell wasn't necessarily pleased. And what it comes down to is having more consistency. How often did we see some punts that just came off the side of the foot or weren't hit in the manner that he wanted to? And that can obviously impact the whole team. I do think, based on what we've seen so far, it feels like there's a little bit more consistency, a little more depth. And I even think back to practice on Tuesday. I started charting the length of these punts and what was happening. In his first punt, he kicked it over Tyrell Henry's head. And then the next couple, he had I think it was like a 54-yarder with really good hang time, a 52-yarder that was a little lower, but he's clearly the number one punter for them. It's just a matter of, can you be better? Because his punting average, while I know that's not the end all be all, because sometimes you need to pooch it, was 41.3 yards, I think. It was 10th in the Big Ten last season. And so he knows he needs to be better.
So Wisconsin hired an assistant special teams coach this offseason in Eric Racebeck, and he spoke with the media today, and he mentioned both obviously Nathanial Vakos, some of the stuff that he was looking and hoping to do differently with him, and then also with Atticus Bertrams, he confirms what you just said. Some of the kicks that he's had, booming it, I believe was the word that he used in talking about some of the punts that he had. I don't know. I mean, do you need a punter? Is like, if you have a really good one, obviously Iowa, right? Like, if you have a really good one, it makes a huge difference. But I think even if Wisconsin was hampered by their punting last year, so if he's doing and can continue on what we've seen in fall camp, it could be a huge boom to the special teams and to the defense as well.
Yeah, think back just before Bertrams came, Andy Vinovich he leads the program in punting average for his career. And so it does make a big time difference. And I do feel like what we've seen is different from even what I remember seeing last fall, for example, which was Bertram's first camp, where you're looking at it and you're going, what is this going to look like in the season? And it sort of looked like what we saw in practice. And so the fact that he's able to get a little bit more distance and hang time on it is going to be beneficial for this team, obviously.
For sure. Still a little bit up in the air in terms of who's going to be the returners. We know Vinny Anthony. It does kind of feel like Vinny Anthony is going to end up being their kick returner, with Bryson Green as kind of the side, the co-guy on the other side. But punt return is still kind of open. We know Tretch Kakuna was talking about how he was running with the first team, and he's certainly a potential option, but Vinny Anthony's back there as well. And then Tyrell Henry, a guy who has some experience back there doing it too.
Yeah, Matt Mitchell was asked about the return game, and he felt pretty firm and confident in that what Vinny Anthony did last season, especially towards the second half, showed them why he's in a position to be that guy this year, whereas he wasn't ready to make a commitment in the punt return game. While Tretch is certainly an option, he essentially said, don't sleep on Tyrell Henry. And we know that Henry has that background at Michigan State. He was their top punt and kick returner. So there's definitely a competition still going on there.
And we'll see how it plays out. Again, Wisconsin will be, I don't know what their practice schedule is the next 2 days. I just know that we won't be there. But then they obviously have their open practice coming up on Saturday down in Platteville for anybody that wants to go. And then they will close out their practices down in Platteville on Sunday night with a scrimmage. So certainly looking forward to that. We'll be back a little bit later this week and talk about whatever else comes up, because it is fall camp and there's always something to talk about. Jesse, thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach.
All right, there he is, Jesse Temple from The Athletic. You've been listening to The Camp.